It's time for round 3 at Lumen Field. I'm going to be diving into all the wildness from Wildcard Weekend that leads to Seahawks 49ers Divisional Round. Coming up next here on our Sunday edition, Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in for this Sunday night episode, whether you are listening in from Richfield, Washington, or Jacksonville, Florida. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week and helping Locked On Podcast Network become the #1 sports podcast network. The Seahawks were off this weekend for Wildcard Weekend, but still plenty at stake trying to figure out who Seattle was going to play in its first home playoff game since 2025 years ago. First time they've played in the divisional round at home since way back in 2015. We now know who that opponent is going to be, thanks to the San Francisco 49ers pulling off the upset against the Philadelphia Eagles today in Philadelphia. Didn't play out quite the way that I anticipated that game was going to. Maybe gave the Eagles a little bit too much credit on offense. That has been an issue for them for most of the season. They just have not been consistent, more 3-and-outs than anybody, and they did not finish drives today. And San Francisco busted out some creative plays. They had a Juwan Johnson touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey, and they played like it was their last game of the season. You didn't get that urgency from Philadelphia. So we've got a 49ers Seahawks round 3 coming up at Lumen Field. Now, we don't know whether it is going to be Saturday or Sunday. We may know that after the conclusion of the Patriots-Chargers game that is going on as we speak. That is going to provide more clarity on the AFC matchups, because the biggest issue there is you've got the Steelers and Texans playing tomorrow night, and neither one of those teams is going to be playing on Saturday. So that is going to make a big difference in regard to when certain games are going to be slated next week on the schedule. It impacts the NFC games. So we don't have any clarity on that front. It could be Saturday, it could be Sunday, but we do know the Seahawks are going to be playing the 49ers. Now, before I dive into this latest matchup and take a real extensive first look at San Francisco versus Seattle, part 3, I just kind of want to take a step back here and look at what has been a wacky wildcard weekend and how we got to this point, because at this time last night, it looked like the Green Bay Packers were going to be the team traveling to Lumen Field. They were up 21-3 on the Chicago Bears at halftime. You got to see Ben Johnson rolling the dice a bunch of times on 4th down that seemed to be really poor decisions, and they backfired. And next thing you knew, the Chicago Bears were down 18 points. But Green Bay took their foot off the gas near completely, and that ended up turning into a historic comeback. 24 points for the Green Bay Packers opponent, the Chicago Bears, in the 4th quarter. 3 touchdown drives led by Caleb Williams, and Chicago ends up stealing that one 31-27. So instead of Mike McDonald versus Matt LaFleur, now we get to see Kyle Shanahan versus Mike McDonald round 3. And so that was really the game that pivoted everything. With the Packers losing, we knew going into today that Seattle was going to have a round 3 against an NFC West opponent, but it remained to be seen whether it was going to be the Rams who edged out the Panthers on Saturday, or if it was going to be the 49ers, all depending on what San Francisco did in Philadelphia. And the Eagles were ahead for a good chunk of this game, but San Francisco found a way to get it done in the final quarter and exit the city of brotherly love with the upset win. So with all of that playing out and all the craziness, there's some really good games in the AFC that have happened to this point as well. Buffalo and Jacksonville. I thought Jacksonville, this is the year they were going to advance, and Josh Allen decided to put the Bills on his shoulders and his legs, and with all the injuries, and let him there. So there's been some really good football. There's been some really bad special teams pretty much for every team in this tournament so far. But We now know the Seahawks are going to be playing San Francisco by virtue of Green Bay losing that game, San Francisco getting the win, and the Rams holding on against Carolina. They looked very vulnerable in that game, and it looked there in the closing moments like Carolina was going to pull it off again and beat the Rams for a second time in 2 months. Matthew Stafford had other plans. So all right, you are looking now at a Final Four in the NFC that's got 3 teams from the NFC West. And maybe that shouldn't be a surprise considering all 3 of the playoff teams in the division had at least 12 wins, with the Seahawks leading the charge with 14 wins, the Rams with 13, 49ers with 12. And this has only happened 2 other times in NFL history. So you're looking at a pretty rare phenomenon, 2022 being the last time when the NFC East had 3 teams that were in the Final Four. This year, you get to see 3 NFC West teams. And I think, we'll look at more specific stuff later in the show here. But, I've seen some arguments one way or another. Is this a better situation for the Seahawks going up against an injury-marred 49ers team who, by the way, did lose George Kittle for the season today, maybe the beginning of next season in doubt as well, an Achilles tear. One of my favorite players in the entire league. I've always had great respect for the way George Kittle plays. So stinks to see that situation. You want to beat your opponents at full strength. The 49ers have a ton of injuries, and this just compounds on that. They did have Trent Williams back in the lineup today. He did not play in that season finale game in Santa Clara. So that is going to be a storyline here going into this game. There's no question about it. But losing Kittle, just another weapon down. Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions, 2 pretty bad ones today against Philadelphia's defense. So there's certainly some things to look at from San Francisco's perspective coming out of this game that the Seahawks can feel good about. And I'll dive into more of that as we get later in the show. But I think when you look from a matchup standpoint, it's easy to see why this would be the more ideal pathway for the Seahawks to get to the NFC Championship game. Though drawing the Rams off of a bye week, there's some positive consequences potentially to that. You are the team that's well rested. Matthew Stafford's coming off a game where he injured his finger. Who knows what he's going to look like health-wise coming to this game? I'm sure he's going to be fine. But this would have been an interesting case test there, having the Rams, who had just played the previous week, and Seattle had been off. Would the Seahawks have benefited from that rather than potentially playing the Rams at Lumen Field in the NFC Championship game? And the Bears may have something to say about that as well, with that impressive win they had coming back against Green Bay last night. But this is going to be a really fun Final Four in what I believe are the 4 best teams in the NFC. Green Bay, if they were at full strength, maybe you could throw them in this mix, but that defense was terrible after Micah Parsons got hurt. And offensively, they played way too conservative, had poor time management in that game last night. So hard to put them in that mix. Carolina certainly was not one of the best teams in the NFC. They just won the weakest division in the league. So you've got the best 4 teams, 3 of them coming from the same division. The Seahawks get the team that has the most injuries in the San Francisco 49ers, a team that you just beat less than 2 weeks ago. You get an opportunity to try to win the season series out of 3 games against your rivals from the Bay Area, and don't have to play the Rams until the NFC Championship game. So I think this ultimately is the best setup for the Seahawks. Both these teams would be challenges. There's no question about it. You got to give any team coached by Kyle Shanahan, the way these guys have gutted things out and they just keep coming back and punching back. This team has got an incredible amount of resiliency in the heart, but the Seahawks do too. So I think this is going to be a really fun third matchup, and I'm looking forward to diving into some of my first thoughts going into this game coming up next. But first, we're going to get to the mailbag. We're going to do a Sunday mailbag. Tons of questions from you, the Valued 12s. Going to get to that here in a moment on our Sunday night edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but Prize Picks being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump into the action. If you haven't tried it out yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players' stats And if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including Texas, California, and Georgia. Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, whether it's fantasy scores, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDINNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code LOCKEDINNFL for $50 in lineups right after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I actually can take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play to play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Welcome back to the Sunday night edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. You follow your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Seahawks with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonseahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. With it being a Sunday night show here on Wildcard Weekend, going to open up the mailbag. And part of the reason we did this is I was getting ready for the show, and there were a million questions coming on social media, in particular on X. So we are going to dive into all the big questions here. And coming first here, this one is coming here from CJ. What do you think it will take for the Seahawks to lose this game against the 49ers? Well, I am going to dive into more of my first thoughts here, but I think the first thing you got to look at is finishing in the red zone. And that was something the Seahawks did not do in week 18 at the level I think they're going to need to in this game. You can't expect you're going to hold the 49ers to just 3 points again. This offense has too many weapons, even without George Kittle. I expect Brock Purdy is going to play better. I expect Kyle Shanahan's going to have a revised game plan. So to me, that is the biggest thing. And obviously turnover, if Seattle turns the ball over 3 times, that would not be a good situation, and it gives the underdog momentum. But I think the red zone efficiency, particularly on offense, can you find a way to finish with touchdowns? I think they're going to need more than one TD like they had in week 18 to advance to the NFC Championship game. Dennis Gill 10 on X. How does Elijah Arroyo's return help the passing game? I think in the case of Elijah Arroyo, it's another player that can stretch the field. And I think without him, Jackson Smith-Njigba obviously was the best field stretcher of the National Football League. We understand that looking at the stats this year. But Torrey Horton was the other guy that they had. Rashid Shaheed is more than capable. He hasn't necessarily hit on a bunch of big plays in the passing game since he came over from New Orleans. But Torrey Horton's size and his ability to win downfield, Seattle's missed that a little bit. And Arroyo, when he's hit this year, there's been some big plays, 4 catches of at least 24 yards. I just think his athleticism and ability to stretch the field vertically, that gives the offense more options in the playbook, particularly in those 2 tight end sets, than what they've had the 4 games without him. So to me, that's the biggest difference that he makes offensively for the Seahawks, being back in the lineup. And this question here from Jason Yee. Did we luck out getting to play the Niners over the Rams in the divisional round? And if so, who do you think wins the other NFC divisional round? I just mentioned this at the end of the last segment. I think when you look at the injuries and just the overall talent that is available right now, this is the best draw the Seahawks could ask for. With that being said, San Francisco's got a great head coach. They clearly are confident. Just went into Philadelphia and won against the defending Super Bowl champs. in the wildcard round on the road. There's a lot of reasons to believe San Francisco is going to come out angry after the way they played in Week 18, having Trent Williams back, even if he's only playing at like 70%. That is a big deal for their offense. So, look, I don't know that luck out is the right word. I think it is a better draw, but this is still a team you cannot take lightly. You can't rest on your laurels. I don't expect the Seahawks are going to in this game. But as far as the other matchup, the Bears and the Rams, that one's really a toss-up to me. I actually think the Bears match up better with the Rams than they did with the Packers. And it's weird when you look at division rivals in the playoffs. Those games have a different feel because of the familiarity. We're going to see that with the Seahawks and 49ers. But look, the Rams have had their defensive issues. They're giving up over 28 points per game since Week 12, since their first win against the Seahawks in Week 11. Every game since then, averaging over 28 points per game, giving up. The defense has given up a lot of big plays. They have not looked like the same group we saw early in the season. They're making me a believer with their ability to be cardiac Bears and cardiac Cubs, I guess the best way to put it, and finding ways to pull out games late when they're getting outplayed in the first half. I'm still going to go with the Rams because I trust Matthew Stafford a little bit more than Caleb Williams, he's got those erratic throws that he sprinkles in, and then he follows it with jaw-dropping ones. And he did a lot of those last night against Green Bay. But I would hedge bets right now. I'm still going with the experienced quarterback, the playoff experience team. I think the Rams take that one. You can have back-to-back NFC West grudge matches for the Seahawks if they can find a way to get by the 49ers. Amanda Cole with George Kittle going down today. What appears to be a season-ending Achilles injury, he will definitely not be playing next week. Does our game plan change for the playoff rematch? I don't think it's going to change too much with what the Seahawks want to do because there's been plenty of injuries for the 49ers all year, and Kyle Shanahan is always going to have tight ends involved. Tonga's had the game-winning touchdown the first time these teams played. He's going to be out there. Farrell's another tight end that they have that they trust. Kyle Juszczyk is playing a lot of H-back, and he's catching the ball. So they still have pieces. They're still going to run their multiple tight end looks. They're going to run their two-back sets. They're not going to change who they are. And so I expect the Seahawks are still going to be defending them as such. So Nicky Manwari, you're going to be on Tongas. You're going to be playing against slot receivers, maybe on Jawan Jennings some this game. I don't expect it's going to change too much what they are going to be doing game plan wise. You have to remember George Kittle was coming off another injury and wasn't playing at 100% in Week 18 too. So I don't know that it's going to change too much what the Seahawks are going to do. There's going to be wrinkles because it's the same two teams, a different game. San Francisco's got a chance to adapt. I think Seattle's going to be planning for that as well. And our last question here, this one coming off of Blue Sky. Who is your ultimate X factor? Now that we know the 49ers are the opponent, who is your ultimate X factor for Seattle to get to the NFC Championship game and potentially the Super Bowl? So that's a really good question. It doesn't really change, though, how I have felt about this going into the postseason. It didn't matter who the Seahawks were going to draw, whether it was the Rams, Panthers, Packers, or in this case, the 49ers in the divisional round. I'll go one guy on offense and one guy defensively. For me, it is Derek Hall. And I mentioned this on our show last week. I just think when he is humming and he is rushing hard off the edge, playing with the physicality and the motor and just the anger that he plays with, I think the Seahawks are an even better defense. It adds another element to their ability to harass quarterbacks. So if you can have a repeat of what he did the first time against Brock Purdy in Week 18, I think that he can be that real difference maker that gets Seattle over the top in terms of being the X factor. And then on the offensive side of the football, now that he's back, I'm going to say Elijah Arroyo, because even though he had less than 20 catches this year, not a huge part of the offense, but again, that ability to stretch the field, and you are going against a 49ers defense they've had so many injuries at the linebacker position. Their safeties have been undermanned at times. They've had to come up and really aggressively play the run because of their run defense struggles. Today they were better, but are the Seahawks going to be a team that's much more formidable, being able to attack down the seam and make them pay for putting guys up in the box? Absolutely. And I think Elijah Arroyo can be a big part of that. They need somebody else that can really stretch the field. Shaheed could definitely be that guy too. But I think the tight end position, having a guy that has that capability can really be a difference maker. So I'd say Arroyo and Hall, those are my X factors. If you can get some production out of Arroyo in the passing game and Hall can keep playing the way he did in that season finale, you have him harassing the quarterback, making some big hits, playing physical run defense. Those are guys that I think can really come through and give the Seahawks a chance, a best chance to make this season a special one and really make that deep playoff run that they haven't done since 2015. Coming up next, going to shift focus to this first matchup. I'm going to be doing some pondering, some first look. Going to talk about a few storylines heading into this third matchup on the offensive side of the football, on defense, and most importantly, if you've watched these games so far in the wild card, special teams as well, that'll be coming your way next here on our Sunday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. The Wildcard Round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Welcome back to the Sunday night edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. It's grudge match time. Divisional round, Seahawks hosting the 49ers. Second time in 3 weeks these two teams get to play each other. But this time at Lumen Field for the number one seed Seahawks. They get to host this game. First time they've hosted a divisional round game at Lumen since the last time they went to the Super Bowl back in January 2015. We remember how epic that NFC Championship game was. The Seahawks are hoping to get back to the NFC Championship game for the first time since that season here, but they got to get through the 49ers first. And San Francisco with a gutsy win over Philadelphia on the road. And you look at some of the things that went wrong for San Francisco in this game. Brock Purdy had 2 bad interceptions. They had a missed extra point. Philadelphia did too. That seems to be a theme here in the playoffs. They didn't run the football very well for most of this game. They did get a couple nice carries from Christian McCaffrey and a good screenplay with him in the fourth quarter. So he played better late in the game, but they had a tough time running the football on Philadelphia's front seven as well. And yet the Eagles couldn't capitalize. They had so many opportunities to win this football game and create separation in the middle quarters, and they could not get it done, settling for field goals or not getting any points at all when they got into San Francisco territory. Give credit to the 49ers defense. Another gutsy performance for them. Did a fairly nice job shutting down Saquon Barkley. They kept Jalen Hurts from hurting him too much with his legs, and he wasn't doing too much damage throwing from the pocket. So this was a game the 49ers did everything they needed to do, even with the turnovers. They did everything they needed to do playing a physical brand of football to win the game. Now, they get that rematch here, third matchup, Seahawks 49ers. And looking at this from a Seahawks lens, and Rob Rang and I will have a chance this week, we're going to have so many more in-depth dives into this matchup going into the divisional round. But some things that I'm thinking about here, I want to start with the Seahawks on the offensive side of the football. As far as the questions that I have or, storylines that I'm looking at going into this game. Just coming off that matchup in Santa Clara, the first big thing for me is, can the Seahawks pick up where they left off running the football off a bye week? 3 straight games, 165 or more rushing yards. They went for 180 plus against the 49ers in that game. They only scored 13 points off it, but the ability to chew clock and keep Brock Purdy off the field. Some of that was the defense getting 3 and outs and really shutting down San Francisco's offense, but Seattle kept the football away from Brock Purdy and limited the number of the plays that 49ers had in this game. Can Seattle replicate that in this one? Because the 49ers, to their credit, they played the run a lot better today against Philadelphia. I don't know that the Eagles' offense is near as formidable. They certainly have not been as good throwing the football as what the Seahawks have been this year. It changes up the ways that San Francisco is going to be able to scheme things up. I think there's going to be more rushing room. I still think this has got to be a big part of the game for the Seahawks. Can you find a way to take advantage of this front? And of course, there's that storyline. Is Fred Warner going to play this week? We'll see. We'll see if he's able to play. If that happens, then that maybe changes the complexion quite a bit in this game because of how banged up the 49ers are at linebacker. But let's just assume right now that he isn't quite ready to make that miracle comeback. And you're going against third stringers at linebacker, second stringers if they have D Winters back. We'll see if he's going to be ready to play. Did not play today. I just think that this is a opponent that the Seahawks should be able to run the football on. And I like the way their offensive line has played, just the physicality, the athleticism. They've really found their groove running the football. So that's going to be the first big thing. Can you replicate that? And then can you finish? I mentioned this early in the red zone. 49ers, to their credit, they did it again today. They find ways to get off the field with 3 or 0 points, a lot more than they do giving up touchdowns in most games. There's been a few exceptions to that, but the Seahawks had opportunities to really separate in that game in Week 18. It didn't feel like it was 13-3. It felt like it was a much more lopsided game. But the 49ers had a chance in the fourth quarter a couple of times to really make things interesting. The Seahawks made them pay. They have got to be able to finish. And so I'm looking, how much does Elijah Arroyo help with that? Not a guy that's had a lot of touchdowns, one this year. But does his size, his vertical stretching ability help down there? And then mix that with the run game and hope that you can find a way to finish on more drives. I think they're going to have at least 2 red zone touchdowns in this game because I just don't think San Francisco is going to lay an egg like they did last time offensively. I'm expecting some really nice adjustments from Kyle Shanahan. So I'm looking at it from that lens. Can they replicate the run game? That's a big question mark for me. And are they going to be able to finish their drives? And that's been more of a consistent issue, really the second half. And I think it correlates with Torrey Horton not being. He was really a big part of their red zone success early, but can they finish their drives? Can they get touchdowns? Defensively, are you going to be able to come close to doing what you did to Brock Purdy in that matchup in Week 18? And what I mean by that, are you going to be able to limit his scrambling ability? And when he does break the pocket, get him down, limit his opportunities to run. I thought Philadelphia, for the most part, did a really nice job with that today as well. And it forced Purdy into some pocket passes where he was pressured and he made some bad decisions throwing outside the hash marks. I think if you could take away or at least neutralize the middle of the field, those crossers, the digs, post routes that he likes to throw, you take away those options for him in the middle of the field and you take away the ability to extend plays outside the pocket. I like to call it the Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson strategy. I know Brock Purdy's not the same athlete, but he does a lot of the same things in terms of manipulating his pocket, moving his throwing, his launching point, and succeeding at that and extending plays. Seattle, for the most part, did a really good job of taking that away from him in Week 18 and not giving up many plays over the middle. I think if they can do those two things again, I don't know they can do it the same fashion. There's going to have to maybe be some new wrinkles thrown in there because Shanahan's going to be coming with some different stuff after getting shut down in that last game. But try to get it that Brock Purdy's got to beat you outside the numbers, force him into some bad throws, which he's made plenty of them. He's got an interception rate almost 4% since he came back from injury. I know he's thrown a lot of touchdowns, but there's also been a lot of turnovers. You can coax him into some interceptions if you can keep him in the pocket and force him to throw outside the hash marks, outside of the numbers. I think that is the big thing Seattle's got to show they can do again, and getting some pressure is going to be a big part of that element as well. And I'm also curious to see how Seattle handles the run game in this one as well. They've been great all year against the run. San Francisco's honestly been one of the worst teams in the league for efficiency running the ball. But there's always that Christian McCaffrey element. You held him under 60 total yards last game. Can you come anywhere close to doing that again? I don't know that they need to win this game. But you certainly can't let Christian McCaffrey go off and do what he is capable of doing, taking over games. And so I'm looking at that thinking, can you do that again twice in 3 weeks? It's going to be difficult even with the injuries and not having George Kittle there. Still plenty of weapons, still a great play caller, knows how to maximize the players that he has available to him in Kyle Shanahan. And as I mentioned the last time these teams played, it's interesting. San Francisco actually had a higher EPA in special teams in the regular season than what the Seahawks did. San Francisco was number 2. Seattle was number 3. You watch the film and it doesn't really add up, though. The Seahawks have had 3 punt and kick returns for touchdowns this year. They've blocked a field goal, a couple field goals, and The 49ers just don't have the impact plays. Have they been consistent? Yeah, generally speaking, they have been. And the kicker, since making moves early in the season, up till today, Pinheiro missed an extra point, but they've been a lot better in the kicking aspect. They made a higher percentage of field goals than what the Seahawks have this year. So both these teams have been really good on special teams. Seattle had Jason Myers issues in that last matchup. They are going to need Jason Myers to be on his A game, kicking back at Lumen Field, and hope that you can put that Week 18 game behind you. I think they're going to need some big kicks from him in this contest. Certainly, you can't have him giving up 40 yards starting field position and missing his landing spots on kickoffs either. So Seattle's got to play on special teams the way they're capable of, because the 49ers, maybe not today, but they've been really good on special teams most this year. And that can be the equalizer. I think the mistakes on special teams, those can really be magnified in playoff games. So I think it's a big storyline coming into this game. Who's going to be better on special teams? Who's going to limit mistakes? And who can make an impact play or two in the third phase of the game? That could be a difference in who's going to win this one and go to the NFC Championship game. We're going to have a lot more time to really dig deep into this Round 3 Seahawks and 49ers throughout this week on Locked On Seahawks, including tomorrow. We'll be dishing out, rather than Monday musings, we're going to be pulling back the curtain and really taking a deep dive into who the 49ers are, what the Seahawks and 49ers did in their two matchups, what to expect in this third one at Lumen Field as we continue to dig deeper. That's going to be coming your way tomorrow. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Go Hawks.